What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of Primetime Sports Podcast, hosted by Joey Maylars. This is a very special episode, NHL playoff preview. I have Dan the Man, the King of Hasbrouck Heights Behrens, here with me on the podcast. How are we doing today, Dan?
Hey, we're doing great. Playoffs starting tomorrow. Couldn't be better.
I'm psyched for this episode. I appreciate you taking the time. Unfortunately, did not stop the recording just a minute ago, so we did just preview the Islanders series without having it being recorded, unfortunately. So we'll be repeating that. So you'll hear everything live here, and you'll get our predictions. But we did just have a 10-minute conversation about the Islanders without it being recorded. So I do apologize for that, Dan. But as I said, I do appreciate you making the time for this. Much appreciated, as always.
All good.
You're the man. So, all right, we'll start out, which we can start with the Eastern Conference and Western Conference. What would you rather start with? We can fly through the West, probably. It's up to you, though.
Either one's go with me.
Okay. Or we can start with the East, so we can start with the B's and the Isles. It's up to you, though. I'll let you choose.
Sure, I can. I can give some Isles spiel again.
Okay, yeah. We'll just run back what we were just saying. So we obviously got a big series, Islanders versus the Hurricanes. A good season series during the regular season. They split two wins, one regulation loss, one overtime loss, so 2-1-1 each way. The Islanders did play them last year in the playoffs, lost in 6 games, but they do have the experience now coming in. And one thing we were just talking about before we got live here on the recording was obviously the chemistry now building for the Islanders, which I'll let you get back into that. Having everybody healthy, except there's obviously a couple pieces that are hurt right now, but having Bo Horvat healthy, obviously with Barzal, definitely helps, but I'll let you dive into that.
So we were just talking, Isles' health is going to be crucial for this series because Dobson's been out last 2 games, and as far as Patrick Roy says, if he's truly healthy, I mean, this team definitely has a shot with him. Without him, I'm not so sure. Because, he's been one of the most prolific scorers or point getters for the Islanders all year. Mm-hmm. Probably only behind Barzal and Horvat. And for defensemen, he's way ahead of everyone else. So he runs the power play, and without him, the power play looked absolutely awful. Mm-hmm. So he's crucial. And then Pajot being hurt, got hurt in the last game of the season, go figure, in a game that doesn't matter. Third line center with Cizikas being at the top line. If Pajot's out, which Patrick Roy said he was just day to day, that pushes everyone down. So if Cizikas has to hop into that third line center, that absolutely hurts that top line that's had a ton of chemistry with Cizikas, Horvat, and Barzal. Mm-hmm. They've been the best. That trio has been the best top line since Horvat even came in to the team. So number one is Isles' health for sure. Mm-hmm. And then we talked a little bit about Varlamov starting for
the goalie tandem. Yep.
And for non-Islander fans, that might be a bit of a surprise, because Sorokin's been pretty much the starter all year except for the last 15 games or so. But he's had a bit of a down year, and they've pivoted to Varlamov, who has a ton of NHL experience and also a good amount of playoff experience. So, you ride with the goaltender that's hot. And hopefully it works against a very, very tough and deep Carolina team. Mm-hmm. I'd say probably even better this year than they were last year.
Yeah.
They just have great hockey players across the board.
Yeah.
Who are on their third lines that could be on second lines of other teams. So it's no doubt it's going to be an extremely tough series for the Islanders to win, but they're really the hottest team in hockey right now, so I do like their chances. Probably a 6 or 7 game series, I'd imagine.
Definitely. I think with everything you said perfectly about them being red hot coming into the series, definitely will play a factor. They're 8-1-1 the last 10 games. Varlamov, the last 10 starts for him, 8-1-1, 209 goals against, .930 save percentage. So obviously having him in net is huge considering how great he's been playing. Mm-hmm. Sorokin did struggle last year against Carolina a little bit in the playoffs. Obviously losing, those 4 games are tough, but they did have it be a 6-game series, so that's obviously good to see. They at least fought back, won a couple games. 2-6 goals against last year for Sorokin in the playoffs against them, .920 save percentage. He wasn't the reason you lost. I think, if I remember right, the power play was a real struggle last season, which it wasn't elite this year, but it's better this year than it was last year. I remember in the playoffs that was definitely a struggle for them, and that was definitely a difference maker. But now having, obviously, some continuity there on the top line is definitely huge.
Yeah.
Hopefully Padjo's healthy, like you said. That would mix up lines. That would definitely be a problem. I think it could be something like what the Clips are doing with Kawhi Leonard, doing that he might not play, he might play. They don't know if he's hurt. They don't know if he's going to be healthy. So that the other team has to game plan for Kawhi not playing and Kawhi playing. Maybe just try to distract them a little bit. I don't know if that's what the Isles are doing with Padjo. Maybe because it's a legit injury from the last game of the season. Maybe that's not the case. Kawhi missed the last 2 or 3 weeks of the regular season, so a little bit different of a situation. But I think they could just be maybe hoping Carolina has to game plan.
Gotcha.
So we'll see what happens, obviously, there. I do think they might just be game planning, trying to make sure that Carolina has to game plan for Padjo playing and Padjo not playing, since that would mix up the lines. One thing the Islanders this year is they did struggle in overtime, 16 overtime losses, most in the NHL, tied with, I think, Montreal for the most. With that being said, though, they did get a lot of points from those losses, which obviously helped them get into the playoffs. Now they have a chance, obviously, to compete against Carolina yet again. But Carolina's a dangerous team, like you noted. Second best power play in the NHL. The first line's very good. One guy we mentioned before we re-recorded, I guess, even though we weren't recording the first time, Jake Gensel, getting him at the deadline was obviously huge. 8 goals, 17 assists, 25 points in his last 17 games. Sebastian Aho has been great with him. And we're talking Hurricane Sebastian Aho. He's been great. 11 goals, 10 assists, 21 points in those 17 games. But I think if you look at the goalie situation, obviously Frederik Andersen's a little bit more experienced. And then obviously the other guy, I think his name was Peter Kojakov, right? Andersen's more experienced, 34 years old though, and then Kochakov's just 24, so obviously a big difference there in experience. But Andersen, 184 goals against, .932 save percentage, very good goalie. Kochakov's good as well, 2-3 goals against, .910 save percentage. So it looks like it'd probably be Andersen starting, obviously. But I think when you look at that team, though, they're experienced, obviously, in the playoffs, like we saw last year. But last season they didn't have Svechnikov healthy. That was a big loss for them. He had a torn ACL, if I remember right, or something that made him miss the playoffs. This year they have him back, but the Isles are also a little bit more experienced this season as well. So I'm talking about Carolina being experienced, but the Isles, one thing I mentioned before we got on this broadcast here was that they were the third oldest team in the NHL this season. So they do have experience and obviously some age. But what's your biggest fear with that Carolina team? Is it that first line, obviously Gensel being obviously a big acquisition at the deadline? Is it Frederik Andersen, a goalie, because he can obviously have great games? He's never been the best goalie in the NHL, but he's had some good seasons. What's your biggest fear of that team?
So I think you gotta say the power play, because I mean, with a lethal power play against the Islanders have the worst penalty kill in the league.
Yeah.
So if Padjo's out and he's a big penalty killer for the Islanders. So if Padjo's out and you're playing one of the best power plays, that avoiding penalties is going to be absolutely crucial. If they can do that, they have a shot even without Padjo. But because Padjo takes all the face-offs, best by far on the Islanders at the dot, and so I think you have to say it's defending the power play, because I mean if you're giving up power plays, you're probably giving up at least 30%, it looks like.
Yeah.
I think the Islanders were at like 32%.
Yeah. It's hard. It's not going to be easy. It's not going to be easy. But like you noted, though, obviously if you have everyone healthy, it's a little bit different of a series. But the Isles have shown, though, especially late in the season this year, they're getting hot at the right time. Last season, winning a couple games against them, even when the chemistry wasn't completely there and they weren't completely healthy, that was obviously huge just to get some experience. And then obviously heading into this series now, I think everyone's picking Carolina for the most part, so the Isles are really playing, I guess, with house money, so to speak. And that can play to their advantage because everyone's kind of counting them out. That's why I'm counting them in. Yeah. And I know the Islanders making the playoffs before the season began. That was one thing me, you, and the sports guru Mike Hurley in our episode, we all gave our predictions. The Isles making it in because I thought they would figure things out. They'd obviously get a little more continuity, which is obviously huge. And I thought also the goalies are great. Both of them are good. It's a good thing to have is competition between the two goalies when they're great. It's not like you're picking between, a guy that's one of the best in the league and then a guy that's, the lower half of backups. Both of them are very good. So I weighed all those things. I thought the Isles would be in the playoffs. So I did believe in them enough to make it here, and I'm believing in them enough to win this series. It sounds crazy, but I'm taking them to win this series. But I'll hear your take on it, though. So if the Isles win the series, you think it probably has to go 6-7 games at the very least, whether they win or lose, right?
Yeah, I think for sure. The Islanders have shown they've always been like this gritty team that is hard to beat day in and day out. Less so this year because that penalty kill has been awful. Usually it's flip-flopped where their power play is horrible, and this year power play has been okay. Yeah. And the kill has just been atrocious. But they still play sound defensively at even strength. But, it's like the old adage with the Islanders is they play boring hockey. Biz absolutely hates the Islanders.
Yeah, he's not a fan.
That's what he always says. It's hard to beat those boring teams day in, day out because the Islanders can easily get a 3-2 win against a good team. I think it has to go 6 or 7 games because the Islanders aren't going to kill you scoring 5 goals a game. That's just not going to happen.
Yeah.
It's going to go the distance. Whether the Hurricanes can put anything together consistently against the Islanders will be a question because once Patrick Waugh came in, he fixed the Islanders' defensive struggles at even strength. If the Islanders play smart hockey, I think they can do it.
Yeah, I would roll the same way. I think if they can find a way to slow down that power play, obviously the power play was second best in the league in the regular season, so it's not going to be easy. It's not an easy task, but when you get to this time of year, no series is ever going to be really easy, especially considering injuries are a major factor in the playoffs in every sport every year. Guys get hurt. And obviously lines are changing in that case. And I feel like with this series, everyone's not giving the Islanders a chance. Everyone's picking against them. And as I said already, I think that could play to their advantage to some degree because they already played this team very tough in the regular season. 2-1-1 each team was against this team in the series. So each team went 2-1-1. So it's like it could be a toss-up, especially considering there were a lot of close games you had to grind out. And I feel like with this Isles team getting that experience last year, losing in 6 games wasn't easy. Obviously, you weren't happy with that, losing at the end of the day. But they did fight last year. They did give it a shot. They were in those games. And I think that's going to play to their advantage this year, having that experience. One guy I wanted to get your take on was Holmstrom. I saw 5 short-handed goals from him this season. Kind of broke out a little bit this year. He had 15 goals. 15 goals this season.
The weird thing with him is he's actually gotten scratched the last few games. Not the last game of the season where they were sitting a lot of their regulars. He's gotten scratched, I want to say, the last, somewhere like 3 to 5 games before game 82. I think that was just trying to get some more physicality into the lineup, not necessarily anything that he was doing wrong. If Patrick Waugh says, "Hey, we need some more offense," bam, Holmstrom goes into the lineup over Fasching. I think that would make the most sense because Engvall's been playing a lot better in recent games. He has some sneaky speed. He doesn't look like he's going that fast, but he has long legs, and he can. Once he gets to top speed, he can blow by anyone pretty much. If Holmstrom's playing, I don't know if that means that things are going poorly, or if Patrick Waugh just sees something different going on.
You never know. Mixing it up sometimes in the playoffs is the best, idea sometimes. If you're needing offense or you're needing a spark, like Ty Lue always says, teams that Ty Lue has coached before, in the NBA, teams that he's coached have said, players like Kyle Korver said it and J.J. Redick has said it, that he'll hold things, for the playoffs and wait to see certain matchups and, hold things back. Perkins said the same thing. Multiple players have said they heard that, he'll hold things, from the regular season. He won't show you, his full deck of cards and say, this is the thing I'm going to use in the playoffs to work against this matchup, or I'm going to go to this guy as a 6th man in this situation. So maybe the Isles have a plan to, maybe go to a certain thing in their back pocket if they need it. We'll see if that's the case here. I didn't really get to see too many Isles games this season, unfortunately, but I did see in the stats there he did have 5 shorthanded goals, which was pretty impressive. Like, that's a good mark for a guy that didn't score too much in his first year, but then this year 15 goals is obviously a major upgrade. So it's good to see in limited games, like you said too.
Yeah, I want to say like the first 3 or 4 of those came in like the first third of the season or something, and everyone was like, what is this guy doing? Like, why can't he do this at even strength? Like, only shorthanded? Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
But yeah, I'd say definitely a pretty good season for him, because I think people were probably guessing more like 10 goals, so getting that extra up to 15 was pretty good for him. And we'll see if he makes the bench in game 1. I doubt it, but could.
You never know.
Against a lethal Carolina offense, that could be what they need.
Yeah, something might be in their back pocket, like I said, like Ty Lue. You never know. You never want to show your full, your cards before the playoffs begin. So we'll see. So we'll move on from that series. So I got the Isles winning that series, and I'm not going to put you in the position to make a pick if you don't want, but I do have the Isles winning that in 7. I think it'll probably go the distance, but I know, like you said, if they were to win the series, it has to go probably the distance.
Yeah,
which is fine.
Yeah. I mean, so I have to roll Isles, but yeah, probably I'd imagine it has to be 6, 7.
Yeah.
Carolina has too much talent. They're gonna get a couple wins.
Definitely. 100%.
What do you want to roll with? Bees? Bees?
We could dive into some Bruins Maple Leafs talk. So the Bees, obviously, coming into this series, they beat Toronto all 4 games in the regular season. 2 of them were overtime wins, so a couple games are close. The Bruins this season, they struggled in overtime just like the Islanders. The Bruins had 15 overtime losses, which was tied for 3rd most in the league. So a little bit less than the Isles, but 1 less, I think it was. But regardless, the Bruins are not a good overtime team, but they did beat Toronto twice in overtime this season. I think the major question is with this team, the goalie situation. Do you go with Swayman? Do you go with Ullmark? They've been going with the rotation all year, so do you roll with one of those guys, or do you roll with both and keep the rotation? I'm probably on the side of you keep the rotation just because you've stuck with that all season, so you can't switch it up now. But I want to hear your take on it. What would you do if you were in that Bruins front office or you were Jim Montgomery? Are you rolling with both goalies in rotation, or are you picking one or the other?
I think you gotta pick one.
Okay.
For like the first half of the series, I think that should be your plan. And yeah, if someone has a horrible game 1, game 2, yeah, take them out. But I think you gotta give someone the first couple games, as long as if they're performing well. At least that be the plan going in, because I mean, you want someone to get hot in the playoffs. Mm-hmm. What you don't want is having Swayman going out for game 1, then Ullmark going out for game 2, and then if one of them performs decent, or say both of them perform decently, if game 3 rolls around and then like Swayman comes back and he's a little not fresh, you want someone who's like really, really up to speed.
Definitely.
And I mean, that doesn't always work. I mean, did it work with Ullmark last year? Probably not. So I mean, it's definitely kind of one of those things you play by ear. But I think planning to say, hey, we're going to give. I'd probably give it to Ullmark based on experience. I don't really know how they've performed over the last 10 games each, but I think you got to give it to Ullmark. Say the first 3 games or so, and if he has a terrible game 1, yeah, put in Swayman.
Yeah, I understand that.
But you want someone to go in there with some comfortability to say, hey, I'm going to be able to take the first half of this series. This is my team. And so I think if you do that, yeah, maybe one of your goalies gets hot and that carries through the playoffs. But I think alternating each game, you wouldn't really get that opportunity.
Definitely. I think you put it perfectly. If you were to choose one, you let them start probably the first 2-3 games, see if they can get a rhythm and get hot. If they struggle after those 2 games, then you make the switch, obviously. But I think if you look at their stats this season, Swayman and Ullmark are very similar across the board. 2.57 goals against for Ullmark. Swayman 2.53 goals against. 9.16 save percentage for Swayman. 915 save percentage for Omagh. So they were very similar in numbers, but I think if you look at their numbers against Toronto, Omagh started just one game against them, 277 goals against, 1-0. They did win that game, but and 925 save percentage against them. But if you look at Swayman, made 3 starts against them. Bruins won those 3 games. 959 save percentage, 93 saves and 97 shots, 1.3 goals against, 1.3 goals against. So I think if you're looking at the numbers and what they did against Toronto this season, Swayman would be a guy. If you're going based off experience, probably Omagh. Omagh's a little bit more experienced, obviously, but like you noted, they did go with Omagh basically all of the playoffs last year against the Panthers, and then made the switch at the end of the series to Swayman, and Swayman obviously wasn't crisp and ready to go at that point. So I think they're in a really tough position to figure out what they want to do, but this is probably something they had to plan, I'd imagine, a couple, 2-3 weeks ago before the playoffs began. The Bruins knew they were in the playoffs. By the middle of March, they probably already were pretty close to clinching. So they probably knew they were going to have to make a decision, whether it would be to go with the rotation or pick one or the other. So hopefully they had a good game plan on it. But I'm going to go with the success against Toronto this season, and Swayman's the guy. But I understand your take, going to the experienced guy like Omagh, who's a little bit more of a veteran. I get that. I get it both ways. I mean, it's hard to really choose.
Yeah, because, you can't really go wrong with one of them. Because, they've both pretty much performed identically really, really well this year. So, can't really go wrong.
I'd agree with you.
What would you say your biggest thing is for this series, going either to the Bees or Toronto?
I think with Toronto, obviously it's like they're very top-heavy on offense, have a lot of guys that can score. Austin Matthews, just a ridiculous season. I had his numbers written here. 69 goals, 38 assists, 107 points. Just a crazy year scoring. Obviously, I'd say the biggest Bruins worry is probably trying to contain him. Even though they have other guys that can score, he could take over a game, in a blink with 2-3 goals. And I think that power play obviously is very dangerous. John Tavares, former Islander, he's still a very good player. Nylander is very good as well. Like, they have a lot of talent, very top-heavy. I'd say their power play is definitely a worry for me. They also do take a lot of shots, whether it's the power play or just even strength. They average 32.5 shots per game, 7th best in the NHL, 3.63 goals for a game, which is 2nd best in the NHL. So I'd say the biggest Bruins worry right now is slowing down that offense, power play or not, just in general. If you're picking just one player, I'd say Matthews. I'd say everyone probably say Matthews, but if you're picking just, what part of the game, the Bruins have to slow down that offense. The Bruins defense, they got guys that are good, especially in the regular season. McAvoy's been a great regular season player last year in the playoffs. I'm more critical of him than most Bruins fans. I think McAvoy's a good player, not a great player. I know it sounds a little crazy, but I think he's a little bit overrated. I think he has to show up a little bit more in these games. He is being asked to do a lot. I get that. But he didn't show up that well in the playoffs last year, and then Lindholm really didn't show up in the playoffs last year. He really struggled in both playoff runs he's been with the Bruins. He struggled. So I'd say the biggest thing for the Bruins is stopping that offense, and what it comes down to is, can the Bruins defensemen step up in the playoffs when it matters most? And it comes down to McAvoy and Lindholm. What would you say? You could pick out something on either side. I guess you could do both sides, kind of like I just did, whatever you think.
Yeah, I think you put it well. Like the Maple Leafs offense, I think this year more than any other in the last, let's call it 3 years, they're deeper than they've ever been, really. Because now they have Bertuzzi, now they have Domi.
Yep.
They have some guys besides their, I don't know, you want to call it like big top four of
top four is good. I get it.
Marner, Nylander, Tavares. Like, they have some more depth now. So they can get some more scoring spread out. So it's not just shutting down line one and then you're good.
Yeah.
Now you got to deal with. I don't know if they all play in the top 6, but you got to deal with a lot more playmakers spread throughout. And I think their defense has gone a little bit better. So I think they're a lot better all around now this year. Because last year it was kind of like, the Maple Leafs won, like they won a good amount in the regular season, and then just absolutely died in the playoffs, and that's how it's been for them.
Yeah.
So this might be the year that they actually win a series.
I want to see them make a run, which obviously I want the Bruins to win here, but one series win since 2004, and it was last year, and then they got swept, I think, by Florida, was it? I think, or something, was it? They didn't really go far at all. If I remember, I think it was Florida. Or Florida played the Hurricanes last year, I think it is, actually. But
Yes. think that sounds right.
But regardless, you're right. This team has been waiting to make a deep run, and they've just not been able to put it together.
Yeah, and so I think now they're probably more properly set up to do that. But I mean, the Atlantic was a brutal division this year. I think those 4 teams are any one of them can win the East, honestly. Between Tampa Bay, Toronto, Boston, Florida. I don't think Florida is. I mean, they're good. Don't get me wrong, but I don't know if they're necessarily the best in the Atlantic. Because I mean, Tampa Bay still has a lot of players. They're basically the same team that they've been for the last 2-3 years. It's just like minus I don't know, Alex Killorn maybe.
They're still experienced, 100%.
That's pretty much it. I mean, they still have obviously Point, Stamkos,
Kucherov,
and Kucherov. Yeah, like those are their guys.
Yeah.
And I mean, they go to another level in the playoffs. But I mean, I guess going back to the Bruins series, I'd say it's tough because I know you're a Bees guy.
I'm not picking against them. It's not like I'm rooting against them here, but I think the Maple Leafs losing 4 games in the regular season, that's a tough thing for them to swallow against the Bruins. In last year, they only got 1 playoff series when I got the bracket up now. They did lose to Florida the next series, the second round, 4-1. So they only got 1 win in that series. And then Florida ended up beating Carolina 4-0. So Florida just went, a ridiculous run after they beat the Bruins last year. But Toronto was, in the way of that for them to get there. So they ended up beating Toronto in 5 games. So Florida was a tough team. So I did say, they lost the next series 4-0, 4-1, same thing essentially. But I do think this Maple Leafs team, they were my pick before the season began to get out of the East. I have them getting out of this series. I'm not rooting against the Bruins in any matter. I obviously want the Bruins to win. But if I'm trying to go unbiased here, I'm going to go Maple Leafs in 7. I just think, obviously, like you said, they've added scorers. And I think just that first line, second line even, are dangerous. And I worry about McAvoy in the playoffs a little bit. Not as much as I worry about Lindholm. But McAvoy is asked to do a lot. And if you look at his numbers, which I just looked up yesterday, he's had 1 playoff goal in his last 35 playoff games. So, and 0 in his last 18. So he's been not really showing up on the offensive end. Maybe it's because his game plan is always just help us out as much as you can on the defensive end, just because he is the Bruins' best defenseman overall. But I am going to go with Toronto winning this series. I hope I'm wrong, though, and I hope I jinx Toronto and the Bruins win. Because that sometimes can happen. That happens a lot of the time, I feel like. I pick a team and then, things fall apart. So we'll see. But I'm going to roll with Toronto winning in 7. It's unfortunate, but I'm going to try to not be, biased here. And I think the Bruins also face-off. We didn't talk about face-offs, but the Bruins are 21st in face-off win percentage in the NHL, 49.5%. The Maple Leafs, that's what they're very good at, 4th best, 53.4%. So that's another worry. That's a weakness for the Bruins. So I'm going to roll with Toronto in 7. I hope I am wrong, though. You can beat them scoring, though, wise. I mean, 3.18 goals against for them this season. 21st in the NHL is Toronto, but I do worry about the Bruins in the series. You don't have Bergeron. You don't have some of those pieces you had in the past that could help you get out of series. So I'm going to roll with Toronto in 7, unfortunately. What do you got here?
Yeah. So, I mean, the Bees have the edge goaltending, and I'd say they have the edge in defense and defensemen.
I agree.
But I think offensively they're way behind what Toronto is. Just Toronto has like 2.5 lines that are just scary, whereas Boston, I mean, they have I'd say probably like 4 guys that you're kind of like, okay, yeah, like they're pretty good, can like really score against you, and then the rest is kind of like middle 6, honestly.
Yeah.
Where Toronto just has so much talent on the offensive end that the Bruins don't necessarily have anymore. I mean, obviously Pasta's one of the most prolific scorers in the league.
Definitely.
But Toronto has like 3 of those.
Toronto's just very stacked. There's no better way to put it. You're right.
Yeah. So do I think I don't know if Boston can really contain them this year. I certainly hope they do, because I never root for John Tavares, but
I like Tavares a lot. I'm a big fan of him, but I know you aren't a big fan, which I get. I get it. I do like Tavares a lot. I think he's a beast, but still a good player. 29 goals this year. He's still good.
But, I'd probably agree with your pick of Toronto in 7, which, pains me to say. But
It's hard. It's not like an easy thing to say, but the Bruins have a lot of guys that can surprise you. Like, no one would say Morgan Geekie's one of the best players on the Bruins. I do see that, though. I think he's a very underrated player. So he's one of those guys in the middle of the pack on the Bruins where no one's really, I guess, game planning for Morgan Geekie, but he's a guy that can obviously make plays for the Bees. But you're right. The Bruins, when you're looking at that team, everyone talks about really just those top scorers. Marchand, Pasternak, Charlie Coyle. DeBrusk's shown flashes. He's never been consistent, DeBrusk. That's the problem with him. And I know the sports guru Mike Hurley is always very critical of him. He's never really just shown consistency. I'm a DeBrusk fan. I do think he's more talented than sometimes his numbers show. But I think it's going to be a tough series for the Bees. One guy I am rooting for, though, to show up, maybe surprise a little. Geekie I already mentioned, but DeBrusk hopefully has a good playoff series. I feel like a lot of Bruins fans are just always going at him because he's not living up to expectations. So I got Leafs in 7, but I hope I'm wrong. Maybe I jinxed them. We'll see.
Yeah, I mean, I think so. It's going to be really important for, I think, Zacha to show up this playoffs.
Definitely.
Playoff, he was non-existent. And I think Freddie's another one that's really important for their success. I mean, playing in that middle six and scoring, he's done that really well this year. So if he can keep it going into the playoffs, they already have a shot. I mean, but if they can get some scoring from outside of Pasta and Marchand, they have a great shot, I would say. But until that happens, I'd go with Toronto right now.
Yeah, it's hard picking against the Bees. I mean, I get it, but it's not like a great pick. Like I'm psyched about it. It's just if I had to say a prediction here, I'd be going with Toronto in 7. But I mean, who knows? Like you said, the Bruins do have a chance. It's not going to be like the Bruins are going to get blown out here. I think it's going to be a tough series. I do think the Bruins have a shot at winning. I do think it's going to go 6 or 7 no matter what, no matter who wins. Similar to the Islanders series, I think it's going to go deep. I think both series are going to be a little bit longer than people expect. I guess this one people expect a longer series, but I think the Isle series is going to be a gritty, grinding series for each team. But I'm going to roll with Toronto in 7. And same with you. Which we have similar reasons, but a little bit different as well. I mean, you mentioned guys that have to step up. Obviously, Frederick being a guy that plays physical, can score a little bit as well. Zach is a huge guy that has to step up, especially on faceoffs. Not having Bergeron is a major disadvantage here for the Bees because when you have him for the PK or the power play, that's just a major advantage, having him out there. Now you don't have that. And obviously, didn't have him all season. The Bruins still found a way to be one of the best teams in the NHL, which obviously credit to them for that. But in the playoffs, your weaknesses show even more, especially when you're playing against a team that one of their major, strengths is faceoffs, and that's that team in Toronto. So it's hard. And also, they lost 4 games to the Bruins, so I don't think they're going to want to, come out and let the Bruins make a statement right away. I think Toronto's going to want to make a statement early in the series, and we'll see. But I think we're both rooting for the Bees, but we both feel Toronto, unfortunately.
Yeah, I mean, there's going to be a couple games where Toronto gives up something defensively because they will.
Yeah, they're not a great defensive team. It's really offensively. Yeah.
So I mean, whether the Bruins can capitalize enough on that poor defense to keep up with Toronto's offense is obviously the question. But I think it rests on a few guys. So Freddie, Zacha, DeBrusk, to name a few.
Yeah. Those middle of the pack guys. Yeah.
And like Coyle's been great, stepping up to be first, second line center, whatever you want to call him.
Your boy. Now you're a fan of him, though.
The legends.
Now you're a fan of him. I know the last time I had you in the pod, I can't remember when it was. I think it was probably the NHL season preview. You weren't too big a fan of him then, but things have changed. Things have changed.
The legend, yeah.
He's a good dude, so I respect that. But he's been a guy that stepped up this year, especially scoring-wise. When you lose Bergeron, somebody had to step up. Coyle, I thought, was a third-line guy. He was a very good third-line center. Obviously, this year, Zacha and him both had to move up in the depth chart just because you lose Krejci and Bergeron. That's a major loss. But Coyle's been good. I have no complaints about him. Plays hard, physical, obviously, can score, does a lot of the little things you need. I think Zacha has to be the guy that has to step up out of the center group. I would agree with you. But I like Geekie a lot, too. Geekie's underrated. I don't think he gets enough hype around him. I think he had a couple good games, had a hat trick, got a little bit of hype, but I don't think he gets the respect, overall that he deserves. But we'll see the series. If he has a big series, people respect him more. We'll see.
Yeah, I'm not really a big geeky guy, but
I am. So I mean, that's where we'll differ a little bit, but it's fine. We differ there, but we agree on some of those, guys that are under the radar. Jaron Durant, obviously, just to say one, but Geeky, I am a fan of. Mike Hurley, the sports guru, knows that.
Yeah.
So we'll go Toronto here. I got the Isles, the other series. You got the Isles as well.
Yeah.
So we'll move on. What do you want to do, Rangers, Capitals? Or do you want to do the Lightning series against the Panthers, which we already mentioned the Lightning and Panthers a little.
So I think we could just run through the Rangers real quick.
Yeah, let's do it.
I don't think there's too much to say. I mean, Rangers, I think, have the most talent in the NHL this year.
Yep.
As much as that really pains me to say, I think they do. It's kind of absurd how much talent they really have. Basically 3 lines just full of guys who can score. Like, I mean, even when a guy like Capo Caco has like really underperformed, it's like they have Lafreniere who's really stepped up.
Yeah.
And they still have just a ton of elite talent between Panarin, Zibanejad, Kreider. Trocheck's been great for them. And then you have some younger guys like Rempe stepping up a little bit in the physical department, which they needed. I don't know if they needed all the fights, but they needed some more physicality, that's for sure.
Definitely. It adds an edge. And,
I mean, the Caps sold at the deadline, and that kind of just tells you all you really need to know. Like, I don't think they're going anywhere. In my opinion, I think it's 4 or 5 games to the Rangers.
Yeah, I would agree. I have them, I think it was 5. I actually had 6. So I had the Rangers losing a couple games here. But I think you said it perfectly. The Rangers just have too much talent. Panarin was a ridiculous ad for them. 49 goals, 120 points. Both of those career highs. The Rangers overall set team records in wins, I saw, points as well. Like, they just had a great season overall. And then you look at Washington, they're very close to probably being a team that's going to rebuild at some point. I thought they could have used Ryan Leonard as a boost. Leonard would have been a great boost for them on offense, especially considering they only have, they've been struggling on the defensive end, 2.63 goals against, 5th worst in the NHL. Offense has been their forte for years. Obviously, having a guy like Ovechkin, one of the best scorers of all time, if not the best, helps. But I thought maybe if they could have some juice, they could maybe win some higher scoring games in the series potentially. But I don't think they're going to win, 4 games, maybe 2 tops. So I guess 6 games is probably a little bit of a hot take because it's probably going to go 5 or less. But they do have some guys that can step up. Obviously, having Ovechkin helps. They've been very good in 1-goal games, which is something I was mentioning before we got on here, was that they were very good in 1-goal games this year. They had a minus 36 goal differential, but in 1-goal games, they were 22-11 and had the least amount of losses in 1-goal games in regulation in the NHL with just 2. So they did find a way to win a lot of those closer games. And then Charlie Lindgren, their goalie, 2.67 goals against, 910 save percentage on the year, but against the Rangers, 2-1 record, 135 for goals against, and a 955 save percentage. So he played good against them this season, but obviously it's a tougher ask now in the playoffs. It's not like it's regular season anymore. This is the bright lights in New York. I think it's going to be a tough series for them. And obviously Panarin being as good as he is, and all those other guys, Kreider and the rest of that gang there, they just got too many guys that can beat you.
Yeah.
So I would say you put it best. They just have too much talent to compete with right now for that team.
Yeah. It's like when the Rangers have guys like Wenberg, Roslovic, like playing on their third line, it's like, how are the Caps supposed to compete with that when they would have them at least on their second line? So, they sold at the deadline. That's basically it.
That's the best way to put it. I mean, I know they did fight, pretty good against the Rangers this season. They were 2-2. They split their season series, but if the Capitals want to win any games this series, it probably has to be low scoring. I thought if you could add a guy like Ryan Leonard, maybe you could win some of those higher scoring games, like a 5-4, but it's going to be tough. This is the first time they've matched up in the playoffs since 2015, but they've actually lost, this is the Capitals, they've lost 3 straight series to the Rangers. They do have some history. Obviously, Tom Wilson has history with the Rangers, so it'll be a physical series, one that could maybe wear down the Rangers a little bit. Maybe make that next series a little bit tougher, considering they might be a little bit banged up. Kind of like BC versus Michigan Tech. BC did take out Michigan Tech pretty handily in that third period, but BC was pretty banged up after that game was over. So we'll see how this series goes. I think it's probably going to be similar to that. I guess the 6 games is a hot take. I'd probably change that and say Rangers in 5. 2 games is probably too much for the Capitals to win. But I'm rooting for things to be interesting. I think a lot of the time I want it to be 6 or 7 game series because I want to see things get interesting. But I think you put it best. There's no team that's as stacked as the Rangers are this year, especially when you look at what they can do in the offensive end. Then you look at what they have at goalie, Shesterkin.
Yeah.
Obviously, that's our buddy JD. He's a big fan of him. He's Shesterkin's super fan. So I don't know. It's hard to obviously beat a team that can score as much as they do, and then they have a goalie that's still good, 2.58 goals against, 912 save percentage. It's going to be a tough series for Washington. But what would you say overall? Probably 5 games.
Yeah.
5.
I mean, I could see it even being 4, but probably 5 is a better bet.
Yeah, I would agree. So we got them in 5 there. We've agreed on a couple series here, which we'll have one we disagree, I'm sure. When we get to, especially if we do, the later rounds, if we just do a quick rundown of what we have winning each series. We don't get to do a preview of each series in the second round, but maybe we just say what we have in each series. We'll probably have a little bit of that difference there, especially when we get to who we have winning it all, I'm sure. But we'll do the next series, Panthers versus Lightning.
Sure.
The Panthers are a team that we already mentioned a little bit, found a way to make a deep run last year. They were a lot better than what their seeding, was that last year in the Eastern Conference. They're a team that's very good on the road, 26-11-4 on the road. Tampa Bay has struggled on the road, so that could definitely hurt them a little bit in this series. Florida's still a team that plays very good defense. They play physical, 2-4-1 goals against, number 1 in the NHL. A very good power play, yet again, number 1 in the NHL at 29%. And then if you look at the Lightning side, a lot of guys that have won a lot of games in the NHL, a lot of big games as well, winning the Stanley Cup 2020 and 2021, losing in 2022. There's a lot of experience on that team, which helps, I'd say, them in this series. But I do think overall, at the end of the day, if you look at that, that side there on the Panthers, it's not going to be an easy series at all for the Lightning. I do have the Lightning winning the series, which I'll get to that in just a minute after I hear your takes. But I think if the Lightning want to win this series, it's probably going to have to be some high-scoring games. And they're going to have to score a lot on a very good defensive team in Florida. But I want to hear your takes, and I'll get to expand on that a little bit.
Yeah. So the Lightning are a tough one because, I mean, they've had the same core for a few years now, and I mean, they've done very, very well. But it seems like they've only really lost from that core in the last 2 years. So they haven't. This isn't the same Lightning, or it's largely the same core, but it's not the same, not as good of a team as they've been in years past. Mm-hmm. But I mean, they do have 3-4 guys that are all-star caliber players. And I don't know if Cirelli's playing in this series. I can't remember exactly what his injury was, but I think he was on long-term IR.
Mm-hmm. I can look that up really quick just to make sure.
But I mean, Florida's very deep, definitely deeper than Tampa Bay. So I mean, they won the Atlantic, so I might give this series to Florida as our first disagreement. But
okay, so there we are. We get our first. There we go.
Florida does have a lot of talent. I think more so than they did last year. Now they have Tarasenko, I believe, and Kachuk on their second line, which I think is crazy. So I think they can beat Tampa Bay in 7. But yes, very, very tough series. It's going to be interesting. Two Florida teams in the playoffs against each other. I'm not sure. Did they meet in the playoffs last year?
They did. They did meet in the playoffs last year. Florida took down Toronto. Lost to Tampa Bay. So Toronto beat Tampa Bay. Excuse me. And then Tampa Bay was out in the first round. Then Florida beat Toronto. So they didn't meet, unfortunately. So it would have been nice to go based off that. But I think if you look at that team, though, on the Lightning, I'm really rolling with them just based off of, they are very top-heavy, Kucherov, Stamkos, Point. But 3 very good players. There have been, there for a long time. Like you said, that core has worked. And Cirelli looks like he'll be playing. He did miss a game earlier in April due to an upper body injury, but it looks like he missed the last regular season game just to give him a little bit of rest. He should be able to go in game 1, but not 100%, but it looks like he should be able to go. But I think if you look at Florida last year, they did get very hot. And the defense is great, so I'm not going to discredit that. I think if the Lightning want to win this series, which they did win 2 of 3 games against Florida in the regular season, if the Lightning want to win this series, probably has to be high-scoring games, and they probably need, guys to step up. Last year in the playoffs, Kucherov, Stamkos, and Point only had 1 goal, 2 goals, 2 goals. So in that series that they lost. So they need those guys to step up. They only combined for 5 goals in the playoffs last year. You need those guys to step up, especially against a very good Florida Panthers team that they have guys at chippy that play with an edge. Matthew Tkachuk being one of them. He's a guy that plays chippy and get in your head a little bit, and obviously plays physical, so that's something they have to game plan for. I do like Sam Bennett a lot. That's a guy that I think is very underrated on the Panthers. 20 goals this season, plus 17 for a plus-minus. He's a very good player. I thought he stood out last season in the Bruins playoff series against them. But I'm going to roll with the Lightning winning in 6. Hot take, I know. But I like those guys, Kucherov, Stamkos, and Point. I think Point's the best player of those 3, which I think Kucherov obviously gets the recognition as one of the best point getters in the NHL. But I think Point all around, I'm a big fan of him, especially watching him play on the offensive end. He can score a ton.
Yeah.
So I'm going to roll with them winning in 6 games. And you have the other way in 7 games, right?
Yeah.
So you have Florida in 7.
Florida in 7. I think they're just a little bit deeper. Probably better suited to beat you in even strength across 4 lines. But I agree. This series is a toss-up for sure.
Definitely.
And Tampa Bay is better than I think their record indicates.
I would agree with that. I would agree. I think it'll be a fun series to watch. Probably one of the better ones.
For sure. Fans are going to be going crazy in that series. So.
Interstate, yeah. Definitely. It's going to be quite a series. So we'll jump to the West now. We'll probably run through this a little bit quicker than we did with the Eastern Conference teams. We'd start out with the Dallas Stars, Vegas Knights. We already talked about Vegas a little bit, I think, before we started this episode. But Vegas, they were wagging all around the moves they made at the deadline. One you mentioned was Noah Hannafin. The other I mentioned was getting Hurdle from the Sharks. Like 2 very big adds to an already good team. And you were mentioning a little bit before we started this episode that it was pretty crazy to see them as a wild card team, which I would agree with.
Oh, yeah. It's, like, to me, I think Vegas is between them and Edmonton, I'd say. They're the top 2 teams in the West. Not in any particular order there, but that sounds crazy coming from the second wildcard team being the best in the West.
Yeah, it's pretty nuts.
I mean, like the Rangers, I'd say they probably have the most talent, which, again, it's crazy to say because of their record, but there's just talent across the board. Like a guy like Chandler Stevenson might be like a third liner for them, which is insane.
Bit deep.
So I mean, I think they take this series against Dallas, even though they won the division and have been very good this year. But I mean, Vegas just has so much talent, and they have a lot of guys who won the Cup last year. So experience is not an issue, which I think could be a little bit of an issue for Dallas. Mm-hmm. I mean, they have some veterans like Jamie Benn,
Pavelski.
Yeah. But I think Vegas takes it.
I would agree. I think, which Vegas did beat them 3 out of 3 times in the regular season, so they were 3-0. 2 of them were 1-goal games, so they were close games. For Dallas, they are coming into this series hot, 8-2 in their last 10. They're top 3 in goals for, top 10 in goals against. So they're a good team both ways, which I was looking a little bit into their stats. Jamie Benn, still a very good faceoff guy, 61%. 21 goals in the season, 60 points. Tyler Seguin, one thing that's interesting, which, I mean, I've seen him play a little bit, especially when he plays against the Bruins. I mean, I always tune into those games for the Bees, but he hasn't had a 30-goal season since 2019. He had 25 this season, which I thought was pretty interesting. I thought he at least had a couple since then, a couple 30-goal seasons since. I mean, he has not, but they've still been a good team, always competitive. Jason Robinson, very good year, 29 goals, 51 assists, 80 points. But like you noted with that Vegas team, they're just too talented, I think, and obviously the experience isn't a problem. Mark Stone is hurt. He did miss the end of the regular season, but I think it's probably one of those things with Tampa Bay. You know, the same thing Tampa Bay always does, throw guys in long-term IR. Then when you get to the playoffs, there's no salary cap, so bring the guys back and activate them. I think something needs to change there in the NHL. It's just ridiculous. Teams always do that. Have to add something, some sort of rule to try to, regulate that. But Stone coming back for the playoffs hopefully would be a big add for them. But Vegas winning those 3 games in the regular season, I'm going to weigh that heavily in this series. I'm going to roll with Vegas winning here in 7. What do you got, Vegas in 6 or 7?
I'll go Vegas in 6.
Okay, I like that. I I mean, the Stars that you can beat, they are 10th in goals against, but you could beat Jake Ottinger. I mean, he's .905 save percentage, .272 goals against.
Yeah.
Obviously, the Stars, though, did a very good year, credit to them, but Vegas, just the moves they made at the deadline just proves that they weren't, happy or, satisfied with where they were at talent-wise, and they added even more, getting Hurdle, getting Hannafin, so they're not afraid of making big moves. Obviously, adding Jack Eichel, definitely works for them as well. But I'm going to roll with Vegas as well. So we agree there. We have a lot of matching picks here, which I like. Great minds think alike, as they say. So hopefully we're right with a lot of these picks. We can move on to the next series. Which one do you want to do next?
Let's do Vancouver.
Let's do it.
Vancouver, Nashville.
I like it. Yeah, Canucks, Predators. Let's do it. That should be a good series. I think I do have the Canucks winning. I think it was in 6 games. So I guess it wasn't like a 7-game series. Or actually they're winning in 5. The Canucks did beat them 3 out of 3 times in the regular season. As I said, I am weighing those things a little bit here head-to-head. I guess I'm doing the reverse in the Bruins series since the Bruins are 4-0 against Toronto, and I'm going with Toronto. But I think the series will be a physical one. The Predators, top 10 in goals, so they can score 3.24 goals per game. But I think if you look at that Canucks team, they clicked at the right time. The last few years are building years, and this year obviously is the year that things really popped off for them. 6th in goals for in the NHL at 3.4 per game. 5th in goals against. So now they're a very good defensive team as well. And obviously good in the offensive end. Still good at faceoffs as well. 8th best in the NHL. And I like that Demko a lot. Former BC Eagle, 98 save percentage, 2.41 goals against. I'm happy the Canucks figured things out. I was watching them not as much this year or the last couple years. Once they got rid of Adam Gaudette, think about 3 years ago, I stopped watching the games as much. But back in 2019, 2020, I watched a good amount of their games following Gaudette. So I'm a big fan of him. So I like the Springfield Thunderbirds, the AHL team for the St. Louis Blues. I'm rooting for them a lot. He's got 45 goals this year in the AHL. He's had a great season. But I watched a lot of the games back then, and they kept a lot of those pieces since then. JT Miller's still there. Brock Besser's still there. So it's nice to see that core finally turn things around and put together a very good season. But I do have the Canucks winning this series. What do you have to say about this series? Either way, Canucks or Predators.
So, I mean, I don't necessarily buy the Canucks this year.
Okay.
I think that the lack of playoff experience is going to bite them. But, I mean, even more so than that, I don't buy Nashville as a playoff team. I might say that they have other than the Capitals, I'd say they have the least talent of the playoff teams.
I would agree. I mean, Forsberg's good, 48 goals, but 94 points. But yeah, you're right. There's not as much talent as, other teams. The Canucks have more talent, I would say.
So I'd give this game to the Canucks over Nashville. Nashville doesn't really have any depth to speak of. So yeah, I'd say Vancouver 5-6 games, somewhere there.
That's what I got too. I mean, I think when you look at neither team's coming in hot, 4-5-1 in the last 10 for Nashville, 5-4-1 in the last 10 for Vancouver. So neither team's coming in blazing hot, which usually I do weigh that a little bit heading into the playoffs, since you want to be playing your best hockey, your best basketball, your best football. You want to be playing that heading into the playoffs. Neither team's really hot here right now, but Canucks 3-0 in the regular season against them. And then the goalie on the other side for the Predators, Jose Saros, 2.86 goals against. Yeah, I don't really know too much about him. Really just looking at it based off of numbers, but nothing really jumped off the board there to me when I was looking at it. What do you have to say about him? You think he's good, or?
I think he's a really solid goaltender, but being in Nashville, he doesn't really get that credibility.
Yeah, he doesn't get the recognition. That's probably why I don't know too much about him. I would agree.
Yeah, but I'd say he's a really strong goalie, and I think playing for Nashville for a while has kind of hurt him also in terms of his stats probably a bit. But he's a big highlight save type of guy, and he usually keeps the team in their games. But yeah, I don't think they have enough talent. They have Yossi, they have Forsberg, O'Reilly, Ryan McDonough.
McDonough, yeah. Former
but,
Lightning.
Vancouver, even though I don't really buy them as a division winner, I think they have more talent than Nashville, so I'd give this one to them.
Yeah, I would agree. I don't really, as I said, I haven't really watched too many of their games. But like you said, it's not really his fault, I guess, with his numbers. I mean, they do have some good defense. I mean, Yossi's good, but more on the offensive end. What do you got? Like 23 goals, I think it was this year. So he's had a good year. Good offensively. Some of Eric Carlson, good offensive defenseman. But yeah, I think that could be probably the problem there. That's probably why his numbers don't look as great. You probably are better to speak about him and his numbers than I am. But yeah, I would say that's probably the best way to put it. I think if you look at the other side, I think the Canucks have more talent. I guess experience does play a role, though. It does play a role, and obviously having a goalie that's a little bit more of a veteran definitely plays some experience there. Having that, especially in the playoffs, which the Predators have been in the playoffs for the Canucks. I mean, they're not like in and out of the playoffs every single year, so it could be tough on Demko just to adjust right away. But I'm going to roll with the Canucks winning the series, but I wouldn't be surprised if it goes 6 games and there's a fight. They win a game or two. The Predators. I wouldn't be surprised. Would you agree? Probably. You won't be surprised if it goes like 6.
Yeah. Because I mean, Vancouver's not gonna. I wouldn't say that they're gonna kill them, but I'd say Vancouver's probably gonna be in control.
I would agree.
And yeah, they could give up a game or two. I'd say.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. I mean, the Canucks, they're not a team that's, usually in the playoffs. The Predators have had experience, obviously, doing that. So that's something could play to their experience. Maybe they win a couple games that way. But I'm going to roll the Canucks winning in 5. But like you said, it could go 6. So what do you want to jump to now? You want to go Winnipeg versus the Avs, or do you want to jump to the Oilers and the Kings?
Sure. Let's do Winnipeg, Colorado.
Oh, yeah, let's do it. Jets, Avalanche. So Jets won 3 out of 3 games in the regular season. So there's a lot of games here. There are teams, or a lot of matchups, I should say, in these series where the teams, swept their opposing team in the regular season. So the Jets were 3-0. The best team in goals against in the NHL at 2.41. Not a great penalty kill or power play team, but they find ways to still win games. Obviously, defensively, even though their PK isn't elite. Kyle Connor, their leader in goals, 34. Scheifele, I think you're a fan of, if I remember right. 25 goals. You're a fan of him, right?
Yeah.
Were you a fan? I don't know if you had him and Shell at one point. I couldn't remember. I was trying to remember.
Trying to remember. I might have had I think Tyler Mott I might have had.
Okay.
I mean, he's not on the team now, but
you had someone at some point. You had someone at some point that I thought was from Winnipeg, maybe in the franchise. Can't remember. Maybe I'm wrong.
Maybe I did have. I think I have like Pacioretty or someone.
Yeah, someone. You had someone at some point, I thought. Which even if you did or didn't, Scheifele, I guess you're not a big fan of, so I was wrong there regardless. But good player regardless. He's good.
He's good. Yeah.
And then Hellebuck in net, still a good goaltender as well. 239 goals against, 921 save percentage. He's having a good season. So very good defensively. That's what is a big advantage for them. But for the Avalanche, I mean, they're very good offensively. So I guess you get a very good defensive team versus a very good offensive team. The Avs second best in the NHL in goals. Nathan McKinnon, one of the best players, if not the best in the NHL. 51 goals, 89 assists, which is just crazy. 140 points. And then Cale Makar, obviously. I'm not a big Cale Makar guy, but a good goal scorer. I don't see him as one of the best defensemen ever, like a lot of people do, but I think he's good.
Yep.
I think he's talented. 21 goals is very good for a defenseman, especially at his age. He's young. Still, obviously, growing his game. He's only, 3-4 years in the NHL now. So he's getting better, obviously, over the last few years. And then I think if you look at the series, I'm going to go Jets in 7, which I think it's probably because I'm not really that big of an Avs guy. They did already, win before, so I'm going to pick a team that, doesn't really, win too many playoff series. So I'm going to go with Winnipeg here, but I'll let you take your picks here and talk about each side.
So, the Jets were definitely a big surprise this year. I don't think anyone expected them to be in the playoffs.
Yeah, no one.
And, I mean, they do have some surprising depth, bringing in Monahan, I think.
Yes. They do have depth. I mean, they got a couple good players. They do.
Yeah, and, I mean, they have some strong defensemen with Morrissey, but I like the Avs here based more on their offensive firepower with, obviously, McKinnon, the first there, and also have Rantanen.
Yeah, Rantanen's another one I didn't mention. You're right.
And McCarr. I mean, they're not the same Avs team that won it, so I'm not going to say that they're going to go very far, but I think I might take them in this series because Devin Taves, another good offensively. I'd say it could go 7, but I might give the edge to the Avs. I mean, they have that playoff experience. Spread out amongst more people because it is not that same team with like Jack Johnson and whoever else.
Yeah, they did lose some pieces.
Not having Landeskog is tough for them, so I don't think that they're gonna win it all. But they have some veterans. They brought in the boy Zach Parise.
They did. Your boy. Legend. Islanders legend.
Yeah, I'd give this one to the Avs.
Okay.
They have a bunch of strong NHL players for years.
Definitely. I think, if you look at experience-wise and expectations-wise, people were higher, obviously, on the Avs heading into the season than the Jets. Jets, they're a team that never makes sense to the playoffs, really, never really contend. So I want to roll with them winning a series. I think that'd be exciting for them.
Oh, they do have Jack Johnson. I thought he was someone else now. Oh, okay.
Okay, there's a lot of moves, especially I feel like last year, a lot of guys switching teams especially the deadline. It was a pretty busy deadline.
Yeah, really, it was kind of insane. It seeed like Vegas was getting everyone.
Yeah, they went all in, and the Bruins just made, I guess, essentially no big move. Pat Maroon, I don't know.
They didn't have the assets to really give up, so it made sense, but it was kind of like, really?
Yeah, the Bruins, they were in an interesting position because they didn't want to trade DeBrusk probably, and they didn't want to trade, one of the goalies, and the goalies were the biggest assets, but they weren't going to trade one of them. So they were in a tough position to really go out and make a big move, so they ended up just staying put, which sometimes at the end of the day, sometimes that's the best idea, sometimes it isn't. The Islanders, like we talked about, they didn't really, go too crazy at the deadline, but I think that was okay, though. It kept some continuity and kept some experience and let everyone gel more,
Yeah, they were dead silent at the deadline, which, it was kind of like good to say, like, hey, like, we believe in you guys specifically, but then also at the same time, it was kind of saying, like, hey, we don't really know if we're going to even make the playoffs because they weren't in a playoff position at that time. Mm-hmm. So, I would have liked if they made some moves to bring in some more scoring, but they didn't have much cap space to work with, or really the assets besides, like, first-round pick or, like, Wahlstrom.
Yeah.
And even now, like, Wahlstrom's value has gone straight down because he's been scratched so much this year.
Disappointing. Yeah.
But anyway, I'd say I'm taking Colorado based a lot on experience and their offensive firepower on their top line. But
I like that. So I'm going to go Jets in 7, but I think it's going to be a good series, like you said. Can go either way at that point. But just because they were 3-0 in the regular season, I'm weighing that heavily in some of these picks. So I'll roll with them. So now we're left with Edmonton versus the LA Kings, which I think we're both probably high on the Oilers, especially when you look at that series. The Kings are a very good defensive team. Third in goals against, fourth best in shots against, so they do play good defense, very good penalty kill. But they're not a very big goal-scoring team, just 19th in goals for, at 251 on the year. So they're not going to really overpower you offensively, but their defense can wear you down. Actually, Oilers, they're very good, obviously, offensively. Some of those guys they have over there, besides even McDavid, Draisaitl's great. Hyman had a very good year. Like, they have a lot of guys that can score the puck and obviously, make plays in the offensive end. So I think Edmonton's the team that I had before the season began. I had them winning it all, and I'm just going to roll with them to win this series here in 5. With that being said, though, I think this series could go 6 games. I think the Kings' defense could definitely make it hard on the Oilers. Definitely slow them down a little bit. McDavid's goals were down a little bit this season. I know he was battling an injury at one point, was playing through an injury earlier in the season when they were really struggling to begin the year. Then they went on that big win streak, like 17 games in a row. Finished the season with 32 goals, but that's still half the goals he had last year, which is pretty crazy, but still a good season. Still 132 points. But what do you see in the series here between these two teams?
So it's a shame for the Kings that they have the Oilers, because honestly, I'd put the Kings as like the third best team in the West, which might be a bit of a hot take, but
I don't mind it. Yeah,
I'd say against anyone else besides the Vegas, I'd probably have LA beating.
Okay, I like that.
But, unfortunately, they're against the Oilers, and Oilers are really strong this year. Still have some problems defensively.
Yep.
They never really addressed that, but I think now goalie Stuart Skinner has been showing that he can really be a strong goaltender. He's not going to be top 5 in any of those conversations, I wouldn't say.
Mm-hmm.
His numbers just aren't really there, but
Definitely.
They give up a lot of shots because they're not so great defensively, and Nurse can't do everything.
He's asked to do everything, though. Yeah, you're
basically, right. Yeah. But I mean, Edmonton has a lot of firepower. Obviously, between McDavid, Draisaitl,
Hyman.
Zach Hyman's been playing out of his mind this year.
54 goals.
Nugent Hopkins has been great.
Veteran, yep.
Vander Kane is another guy that can score goals for them. And I'm probably still even forgetting someone.
They're very deep, though. They got talent.
They have a lot of guys on that team, and so I think they're one of the few teams that can handle the Kings. Probably, what'd you say, 6 games?
I had them at 5, but I think 6
okay.
is probably the better way to put it. But I had 5 originally, so I'll just stay with 5. But I think 6 would probably be a better bet.
I think I'd take them at 6, but I mean, the Kings are also very deep, but not that same firepower, really. They have Kopitar, the Hall of Famer.
Yeah.
But, and Doughty, another Hall of Famer, but they have Fiala and
Trevor Moore
and Kempe.
Kempe had a good year, 28 goals, and then Moore had 31. But yeah.
So I mean, they have some talent there, but it's not at the same level as Edmonton, really. And I mean, their defense can give Edmonton some problems, but I don't think it's that tremendous to really stop them.
I would agree.
They're not Vegas's defense, really. So, I mean, I think just simply, kind of like the Rangers, Edmonton has just so much talent, and I mean, Kings are going to put up more of a fight than the Capitals are.
Definitely.
But,
they play physical. Yeah.
Yeah, but I think Edmonton takes this one. And you said you had them winning the West?
I have them winning the West. It sounds pretty crazy, considering I feel like things always fall apart when I pick a team to win it all. A couple years ago, I had the Raiders and the Colts meeting up in the AFC Championship, and neither one made it even close. They both had the coaches fired by or whatever it was, week 10, the Colts fired Frank Reich in 2022, and then the year later, Josh McDaniels got fired by the Raiders. So usually whenever team I do pick falls apart, the Orioles stayed hot though all year. So that's why things could be a little bit different here. We'll see how things work out. But
it's probably one of the worst starts in the NHL.
They struggled. Then they won 17 in a row, though, and they really just flipped the switch.
Crazy turnaround for them. I thought they were dead in the water in the first 15 games of the year.
Yeah, they really struggled early on. But this is one of the picks of mine where it's the team actually stayed pretty good all year. It doesn't happen often.
Yep.
So that's why I'm going to stay with them. I'm going to roll with them as my team winning the West, which we don't got to go series by series. I'll let you pick if you want to just go. If you want to go series by series, we can in the second round, or if you want to just say who you have in the Stanley Cup final matchup, that's fine too. Either one, I'll let you pick.
So I'll take Vegas to win the West.
Okay.
I mean, similar to Edmonton, just a ton of talent, but I think they're a little more balanced. A lot of talent defensively as well that Edmonton doesn't really have, and in years past that's always been there.
Definitely.
The knock against them that gets them eliminated. A little better goaltending this year, I'd say. But I'd say Vegas from the West, and as much as it pains me, I mean, I think the Rangers have just looked so good this year. I have to go Vegas Rangers, and I'll this might be what my mind is hoping for more than what might actually happen. But I'd say Vegas repeat over Rangers.
Okay.
Over Rangers.
I know it's tough to say as an Isles fan to even have them make it, so I understand not wanting to pick them.
Yeah.
Which a good thing is here. The good thing about our podcast here, it's hot takes. I'm right a lot of the time. I'm wrong a lot of the time. Like I shouldn't say I'm right a lot of the time. I'm wrong more of the time than I am right. And then you have some picks that go right. At the end of the day, it's always going to be one or the other. You're right or wrong. Sometimes it happens. You're in the middle on a guy where you think a guy's going to break out and they don't struggle, but they also don't do great, so they're in the middle. Mm-hmm. When you're picking a team to win it all or lose, it either goes one way or the other, though. So that's the tough thing here. But I'm going to go with the Orioles over the Rangers in 6. Just like you said, the Rangers are just stacked, so I'm going to roll with them winning the East. I think it's tough, though, with a team that I had Toronto making it in my prediction before the season began, but I just don't think they have enough, really, to get past a team like the Rangers. So I have them losing. I have the Tampa Bay Lightning. No, I actually don't. I have Toronto beating the Lightning in the second round. So then it ends up being the conference finals. I have the Rangers over the Maple Leafs. I have the Maple Leafs still making a run, but obviously not enough. I think the Rangers are the better team. I think they win that series at 5. So my finals prediction, I have Oilers over Rangers in 6, and then you have the Vegas Knights over the Rangers in, was it 6 or 7?
I'll say 7. Long final.
Okay, I think that's what the NHL wants. I always say they want series to go as long as they can. So then obviously, people have to tune in. 7 games adds more drama. Obviously, that's a good trick to get people to tune in. But I would agree with you. I think it's going to be a long series, no matter who matches up. 6 or 7 games, no matter what. 6 games, I still consider a long series. I know it's still 4-2 at the end of the day, but it's still that close to it being a 7-game series. So I consider that a long series, 6 games. But I do like your prediction, though. I do feel like Vegas has what it takes to make a deep run. I have them in the conference finals, actually, but I have the Orioles beating them. So pretty close predictions, though, for a lot of series. Then we tailed off a little bit, in the middle half, in the second half, I should say, in the middle to the second half to the end of it. But we had some close ones in the beginning, though. We had some, series predictions where they were the same. Like we both picked the Lightning. No, did we both pick the Lightning? You picked the Panthers, I think, right?
I picked. Yep.
Okay. It was the Bruins series we both agreed upon. We both went with the Lightning. We obviously both went with the Rangers, but we had some similar ones, especially early on. And we'll see how things work out, which I don't want to hold you too long. We can talk about the Mets for a minute if you want. You want to have a quick Mets minute, or we can save it for another time. I'll let you decide.
Let me see. Do I have any hot takes on the Mets right now? Just quickly,
give us a New York Mets minute.
They've gone on this hot run, 10-3 over the last 13, I think.
Yep.
And that horrible 0-5 start was just because they did not hit at all. I think everyone on the team, with the exception of Pete, I think was under a 650 OPS. And Lindor is still in that funk trying to get out of it.
Yeah,
but the other guys have actually done pretty well. The difference is the pitching has stayed the same from when they went 0-5, but now they've actually started hitting. So I'd hope that they can keep it going. I believe that some of those guys at least will. Nimmo, I think, can have a really strong all-star potentially type of year.
Absolutely.
And Marte, who knows? He's done fairly well, has shown some pop early in the year. Tyrone Taylor's kind of been playing out of his mind. He's an outfielder they got from the Brewers.
I saw he's been driving in guys. Yeah, he's been a big RBI guy for you guys.
Yeah, they kind of got him as their 4th outfielder, but he's been swinging the bat just great. So you can't really take him out of the lineup. So he's been DHing a lot. And then Beatty's has gotten off to a hot start, probably around a 770 OPS or something like that. And I think he's hitting over 300, if not.
Yes,
close.
You got it. 305 batting average, 732 OPS, home run, 9 RBIs. Okay. Not a bad line, though. That's the best batting average on the team besides Tyrone Taylor, so that's good.
Yeah.
For a young player, that's good.
Pete's been average isn't amazing so far, but I mean he has 6 or 7 homers, so can't complain with that. And really, this team offensively, what they need more from is just Lindor, honestly, because I mean he's still, I think, hitting below 200, and hitting from the left side has just been atrocious.
Yeah.
So I wonder if this persists another month or so, if he's just going to say, I'm just going to hit righty, because from the left side he's just been horrible. But I think the biggest surprise for this team so far has been their pitching, because they went into the offseason with 2 starters.
Yeah.
2 starters.
Not many.
One of them is hurt. So
Senga.
It's a completely different rotation right now, where Sean Manaea, except for one little blip last start, he's been great. Severino's been great.
He's been awesome, Severino.
Yeah, like a sub-3 ERA.
2.14, you got it.
Quintana's been fairly solid, like a 3.5 ERAs.
Mm-hmm.
Adrian Hauser, he was the other guy that they got in that Brewers trade. He's shown like he could be a capable 4 or 5 starter, so can't complain there. Kept him in games
Definitely.
that he's been in. And then because Tyler McGill got hurt, I want to say 5-6 games ago, they brought up Jose Buto, who that name probably doesn't mean anything to non-Mets fans, but like he was kind of like the guy that like they call up to make like a doubleheader star and then send right back down.
Yeah.
And this year he's been just insane. And 2 or 3 starts I think he's had.
2 starts, yep. 0.75 ERA. Wow.
He's been insane, and he's like that type of guy that like you call up and for some reason he throws like 6 innings and somehow gets out with like 2 runs earned, but like he walks like 5 guys.
Mm-hmm.
And so his ERA in the majors last year was like 3.6, but like in AAA it was like over a 5. So hopefully he can keep it going. He's shown like a strong 4 or 5 pitch mix, great changeup, but walks have been an issue for him in the past. So far, I think he's been all right in that department. 4 walks in 12 innings.
You'll take that. Yeah. You'll take it if he's got stars and walks. You'll take that.
Yeah. I mean, I'd give up 4 walks in 1 inning. So
I have had my bad games. Don't worry. Last year was a really tough year on the mound for me. I was walking 3-4 guys in a row a couple times, which was bad.
But yeah, I guess long story short for this Mets team, got to keep it going. It's a long season, and yeah, I mean, like Mets fans, I'd say compared to other Mets fans, I wasn't as worried about them because number one, I wasn't expecting them to be like number 1 in the NL East, but also, I mean, 5 games into the year, it's too early to say like, this team is the worst in the league and trade Pete Alonso or whatever those ridiculous fans were saying.
Fans wanted everyone gone.
Baseball is one of those things that really goes up and down, so just got to stay on the up as long as possible, and hopefully they can get another series win against the Dodgers this weekend to make it 5 straight.
I hope so. I hope so for your sake. I'll be rooting for them for this series. As you know, I do like the Dodgers, but this weekend I'll root for the Mets. But I think it's a good thing to see the Mets figure things out, 10-3 the last 13. Then the Isles, 8-1-1 the last 10. So things are looking up here for obviously your teams. And then the Giants have the draft next Thursday night. So things are looking up for the Dan Behrens' sports teams, which is great to see. Don't really have a basketball team, so I guess you don't really have to worry about the NBA playoffs, which is nice.
Yeah.
There's no stress.
Real quick, who's your Giants pick, number 6?
It's a good question. So I think they're in a position right now to grab a wide receiver 1, which I think they have to do. I think that's something that they really haven't done in years. We haven't had a wide receiver 1 since Odell left. So I would take Rome Odunze or Malik Neighbors. If Malik Neighbors is there, I'm taking Neighbors. If not, I think Rome Odunze would be a stud pick there for the Giants. Give Daniel Jones a weapon that he needs. I wouldn't mind Joe Alt. If we want to go tackle, throw him at right tackle, and then move Evandale to guard. I'm not really too sure if that's the best game plan just because what if Evan Neal does turn things around, and then you're left with basically 3 tackles? I don't know. But
Yeah.
that's very, crazy to think since Evan Neal really didn't show much, so it's hard to really think he's going to turn things around. But I guess you never know. And you obviously can move him. It wouldn't be for obviously much, but you can obviously move him to inside to guard, or you could try to trade him if that were to be the case. But what do you think? Giants 6th overall pick, what do you think they're going to do?
So I think if I'm the Giants, I'm not moving up to take McCarthy.
Nope.
But I'd say if for some reason he falls into that 6th, because it looks like he's going to be taken before then now. If he falls into that 6th pick, I think the Giants do take him. I wouldn't necessarily do that, but from what I'm hearing, they're looking more and more at quarterback than they have in months past. I mean, they say that they like Daniel Jones, and I don't know if I necessarily still like him, but.
Be honest, it's fine. I know I'm the biggest supporter of him, but trust me, I've heard it all before. Whether people have loved him, hated him, I've heard it all and everything in between. So it's okay. You can be honest.
But yeah, I think I've said this in last year as well. Like, they have more problems than quarterback. So bringing in McCarthy, I don't think would solve that. So yeah, I'd say probably the smarter thing is roll with Odunze or Neighbors. I'd probably prefer Neighbors, but.
I would agree.
Yeah, I'd say whichever one of those is available, roll with that. But I wouldn't be surprised if they went quarterback, because franchises love to roll the dice on a new quarterback.
Yeah, especially one that's, as it has had his injuries like the Giants. Daniel Jones has had a lot of injuries in the past. And then you obviously look at the rest of the team. I mean, we don't really have a top wide receiver, which is a problem. So that's a need. So that's something a lot of teams like to address, is finding a top receiver, especially in the draft, since you don't have to pay them for 3 or 4 years. And now wide receivers are all getting, 25, 30 million. So that's something teams love to address. Teams love to address the defensive line, especially early on if there's a great pass rush. And the Giants did that, getting Brian Burns, and then obviously getting Kayvon Thibodeau a couple years ago. So pass rush isn't as much of a need now. So that's one thing at least we shored up. Now it's figuring out, I guess, is Daniel Jones a guy or not? Which maybe if they do go wide receiver, that shows that they believe in DJ. That's what it tells me. We'll see. I don't know. What would I do if I'm the Giants right now? I would either take Neighbors or Odunze if they're there. If not, which one of them should be. But if they want to trade down and get some extra picks in return, let's say the Denver Broncos want to trade up, I'm completely fine with that. If the Raiders want to trade up, I'm fine with that as well. I'd trade down if I were the Giants. But I do believe in Daniel Jones. I know most people don't, but what can you do at the end of the day? I can't really convince people, especially this late now. It's 5 years of saying the same thing that I've said about DJ. So if people like him, they either like him or they don't at this point. So I've stopped, I guess, trying to get people to completely agree with me on him, which is fine. It was never I need people to agree with me. It's just I've always tried to defend him. And I feel like now people are starting to see, even if they're not a big fan of him, they at least see he hasn't really had much around him on the offensive line besides, I guess, Andrew Thomas. And then, obviously, Galinsky had, one good year, and then last year really struggled. Like, we haven't really had too much. John Michael Schmitz was a good pickup at the center position, but DJ hasn't really had too much, especially after we traded some of the guys we traded. Like, getting rid of Zeitler was tough. Cutting him, that's a big loss in the offensive line a couple years ago. And then wide receiver has been a major worry for the Giants for years. So, I don't know. That's the best way to put it. I think whatever quarterback steps in is going to have the same problems Daniel Jones does. And I think McCarthy is not as talented as Daniel Jones is. I know a lot of people talk about J.J. McCarthy as athleticism, and he can throw the ball and everything, and I get that he has a strong arm. But I think someone said it on ESPN today, and I think it was a great way to put it. I saw it on Instagram, is that he might be like a strong passer, but he's like, throwing-wise, he is, strength is pretty good, but he's not like the best thrower of the ball. And that's right. I mean, you do need a guy that can throw the ball well, and I feel like with McCarthy, a lot of the time that offense, he wasn't really asked to do too much in Michigan's offense, so that worries me a little bit. But I'm going to support Daniel Jones no matter what. That was a 4-minute rant. I didn't know it was going to be that, but your take on DJ is if they take a quarterback, you're fine with it, which is fine. Like I think everyone's got an opinion on it, which is fine.
Yeah, I mean, I'd probably prefer them to go elsewhere, like wide receiver, probably. But yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if they did that. I wouldn't necessarily be happy with it, but I'd roll with it. Yeah.
Okay, I respect that at the end of the day, and we'll see what happens Thursday night. I mean, we got 6 more days until I'm locked in and ready to watch, so I can't wait. But Dan, hey, thank you so much for taking the time. Much appreciated as always, my brother. And hey, you really brought in so much expertise here, and the NHL is probably the 4th league I watch, the most out of the top four. If you look at, the NBA, MLB, NFL, NHL is probably fourth among those to me. Even though I watch, the Bruins games, at least 2 of their 3 games per week I watch, I'd say. I always pay attention to scores and listen, to things going on around the league. But having your expertise come in here and give your opinions, much appreciated. You know more about the game of hockey than I do, so letting you come in with your expertise is definitely very helpful and very important. I appreciate that, and I do appreciate it very much. So thank you, Dan.
Of course. Thank you for having me on.
Much appreciated as always, and thank you guys for listening. Have a good one. Take it easy, and we'll see you guys in the next episode. Thank you.